We draw from many wells, from oceans and rivers, from lakes and streams, from the muddy Mississippi to the roaring Rio Grande, from faraway places and from the ponds and puddles located in our own backyards. Yet all are refreshing. Each is cleansing, each capable of nurturing and sustaining life. As a people of faith, we draw inspiration from many sources, from earth and sky, from poetry and legend, from art and music, from the conscience and the law written on our own hearts, each satisfying our deep thirst for meaning and the yearning for justice that rolls down like waters in the soul. Come, let us worship together.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Berkeley. My name is Karen Elliott, and I'm the Worship Associate for today's service. The theme for today is water. This is a welcoming congregation, and we are always working on how to better welcome and care for one another. If this is your first time here, we're so glad that you've come. And whoever you are, no matter how long you've been coming, we welcome you in the fullness of who you are. As we begin, we want to acknowledge that this church occupies land in Huichin, the unceded territory of the Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone people. We understand that we continue to benefit from the seizure and occupation of this land. We acknowledge and embrace our responsibility to take restorative action. We affirm that this is deeply felt and commit our congregation to be in right relationship with Indigenous communities, aligning in solidarity, supporting Indigenous projects, and caring properly for the land. Please take a moment now to prepare yourself and your space for our time together today. We'll begin with a chalice lighting. You might get a candle and a way to light it so that you can join from home. Now, let us kindle our candles or the inner flames of our hearts with the words of Gregory Pelly. And so we gather from the ebb and flow of our lives, thirsty for connection to ourselves, thirsty for connection to others, thirsty for connection to the larger life. As we light this chalice, may all who gather here be filled with joy and hope, filled with compassion and love. Here may we be filled so that we may pour ourselves out into the world. And now, please join us in singing our opening song, I've Got Peace Like a River. The words will be on screen.
I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got peace like
Please join me in saying our covenant. Love guides this church. The quest for truth and justice is its common purpose. To give thanks, listen deeply, speak with care, honor our differences, and seek and grant forgiveness. These things we covenant with one another.
Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Well, who's that yonder all dressed in red? God's gonna trouble the water. It looks like the children that Moses led. God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Well, who's that yonder all dressed in white? God's gonna trouble the water. It looks like the children of the Israelites. God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. If you don't believe that I've been redeemed, God's gonna trouble the water. Just follow me down to that Jordan stream. Oh, God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble. I said God's gonna trouble. God's gonna trouble the water.
Higgins, A Drop with a Dream by Christopher Buse. Once upon a time there was a drop of water named Higgins. Higgins was no ordinary drop of water. He was a drop with a dream. Higgins lived in a valley where it had not rained in a very long time, so all the lovely green grass was turning brown, and all the beautiful flowers were wilting, and all the trees were starting to droop. Higgins had a dream that one day the valley would be a beautiful place again. But what could he do? After all, he was only a drop of water. One day, Higgins decided to travel and tell others about his dream. All the other drops listened very politely, but no one believed that his dream would come true. "Higgins," said one, Get your head out of the clouds. You can't spend your whole life dreaming. Higgins decided that he had to do something to make his dream come true. So he began to think and think and think. One day, as he was walking by a rusty old bucket, he got an idea. If enough of us drops got together in this bucket, Higgins thought, there would be enough water to sprinkle on a few of the flowers to help them grow and become beautiful again. Eagerly, Higgins told everybody his great idea. But everybody thought he was foolish. That Higgins is nothing but a dreamer, they said. Higgins decided that he had to do something to convince the others that he was right. So he said to them, I don't know about you, but I'm getting into the bucket. I hope some of you will join me. Then there might be enough water to help at least some of these flowers grow beautiful again. So Higgins ran as hard as he could, hopped way up in the air, and landed with a kerplunk in the bottom of the bucket. And there he sat, just a drop in the bucket. For a long time, Higgins was very lonely. It seemed like no one else was going to join him. But after a while, some of the other drops could see the grass was dying, and the leaves were wilting, and the trees were drooping. They all agreed that something must be done. Suddenly, one drop shouted, I'm going to the bucket with Higgins, and he leaped through the air and landed, kerplunk, in the bucket. Then two other drops yelled, Wait for us! And they hopped through the air and landed in the bucket, kerplunk. And then 10 drops through the air into the bucket. Then 30, then 50, and then hundreds of drops came from all over just to hop in the bucket. Soon, the bucket was completely full of water. But there were still more drops that wanted to join. So they found another bucket and hopped in. Before long, there were 2 buckets of water, then 3, then 4, then 10, and then hundreds, and then thousands of buckets of water. Along came a breeze that blew over all the buckets, and all the water flowed together to make a mighty stream. Everywhere the water flowed, and the grass turned green again, and the flowers bloomed, and the trees stood tall and straight once more. All this happened because Higgins had a dream, and his dream came true because he knew that although he was just a drop in the bucket, enough drops in the bucket make a bucketful. And when there are enough buckets with the wind behind them, then justice will roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream.
We now enter the time in our service that we make for our hearts and our spirits, for our cares and our concerns for one another. We lift up and hold the joys, the sorrows, the cares and concerns we may each be facing. During our time of silence this morning, I invite you to share any joys or sorrows or significant milestones of your own in the comments. I invite us all to hold these cares in the compassionate embrace of this loving community.
The meditation for today is Thirst by Gretchen Haley. Start with the thirst, the deep well you have been forgetting, ancient and ready to be soaked without shame. The well your grandmothers dug for you, the reservoir carved and cared for by the people your ancestors betrayed. Your thirst is their faithfulness, undeterred from believing there are no strangers here. In the same thirst, we are made and unmade, born and born again. Thirst is the thing that remembers who you are before the land, the hard rock, your body stiff and unyielding, hungry for canyons, mountains, oxbow lakes, whole oceans of whales and sea lions, and even the bitter stories of slave ships and refugees refused at shore. The thirst can hold it all, untellable tales of water coming before the ground is ready, water rising without recourse, stories also of creation and construction, the pot boiling for tea and dinner, warm washcloths, and the first thoughts of a seedling in the spring. The thirst tastes the air, knows the sky and the rain before it comes, and sets in motion the leaf off the ledge of the dock, freedom-bound, into the startling cold, and the way the breath leaves and returns like the sense that you are small and also not unlike the summer monsoons, always on the verge of danger, and doing it all, part river, flowing with the browns and cutbows, the immigrant geese, sometimes too much and risk-ready, part creek trickling for miles underground. The thirst knows there is a way to turn every breaking thing into beauty, to flush the wound clean and begin the healing again. Thirst is what is possible when we tend to the wanting of all the world, the generations, the stars, starting with your own dry mouth, and the reaching for the glass, the pouring and the filling, the lifting to the tongue, and the drinking until you are drenched in life.
When I was 6, my family moved to a small town on the outskirts of Madison, Wisconsin. Madison is a lovely city. Its downtown and the state capitol building are situated on a narrow isthmus between its two largest lakes. When I was 11, my family changed houses to one set on a narrow sliver of lakeside property looking due west across Lake Monona toward the Capitol. Now, my mother was a highly intelligent, creative, and talkative woman, born and bred in Village, New England. She shared her zeal for language, art, literature, music, nature, history, and the environment with us children. She filled her parental role honorably. There were 3 meals a day, nice clean clothes, dental appointments, music lessons, a dog, and a cat. But she was less able to nurture us. Family history, genetics, the WASP culture, all colluded in this. When I was young, I wasn't conscious of a lack. But when we moved to the lake, I acquired a second mother. Lake Monona was the quieter, smaller lake, silver to Lake Mendota's blue. I quickly came to claim her as my own and to rely on her abiding presence. Our curve of the lake was on a large sand bar, making the water very shallow and weedy, bad for motorboats, for water skiing, even for swimming. You had to walk a quarter mile out. It was contemplative. In the years until I left for college, I spent hours at the lake, listening to the lapping waves, walking the shoreline, picking my way through the smelly seaweed, watching the ducks, the dragonflies, the water bugs, climbing a neighbor's willow that hung over the water, daydreaming, finding a quiet and depth that was missing elsewhere. For Jungians, water represents the unconscious. My parents' lives didn't allow much for the unconscious, but my nature was pulled to it and by it, and Lake Monona was my refuge. All year round, the lake was a marvel. And just to say, Mother's love of vistas had given us this. The setting sun reflected in the water, watching summer storms approaching from the west, that advancing dark curtain of rain, the progressing whitecaps, the wind. In winter, the gradual freezing over of the lake, as each night closed it in just a little bit more, sometimes waking to find a new smooth band in the morning, sometimes to ice piled up in rough, jagged tumbles. Finally, it closing up altogether, the surface becoming like another planet, where I could walk solo across an expanse of crusty white under a bowl of empty sky. Once, my sister and I found a dead fish on the shore with a scary needle-like snout and teeth. Sure, we had a prehistoric find. We raced to the hardware store to talk with the men there. They shrugged that it was just a garfish. I've learned that long-nosed garfish originated 100 million years ago. So we weren't so far off. Well, ever since those days, I seek the nearness of water. That's my place of renewal. It's no accident I ended up in Berkeley, where I can walk the shoreline at Cesar Chavez Park, glimpse the Golden Gate and the ocean beyond as I drive our roads, stand on our church patio, and gaze at the beautiful bay surrounded by its hills. Every time I drink it in. Divine bodies. They're still my second mother.
In anticipation of the upcoming movie release, I finally read the book Dune for the first time. Now, I admit I've taken a good share of teasing about this, taking this long to read it, and even been threatened to have my nerd card revoked. But, come on now. There are lots of books that are on my enormous books I want to read someday list, and, I bet many of your such piles are just as big. So anyways, Dune. The main setting for this story is a rather captivating one, and one in which water is a central figure. The story takes place on the planet of Arrakis, also known as Dune, and it is a dry desert planet. It's dry all year round, and just to stay alive, the population employs a large number of creative water capturing and reclamation methods. Maintaining even a tree is seen as a wasteful, extravagant wealth due to how much water the tree takes to stay alive. And when folks go into the open desert regions, they wear specially made suits that literally reclaim and recycle all the body's water so that there's no more than a teaspoon lost during a day's time. Among the main desert-dwelling population, they are even more strict about their water practices. In fact, one of the basic assumptions is that while one's body belongs to oneself, one's water belongs to the tribe, based on the fact that the body is literally 60% water, literally more than half water. When someone dies in that society, they have a process where they extract the water from them in order to add it back to the tribe's supply. In so many ways, water truly means life. And scarcity of water means life will be significantly challenged in a very, very real sense. While water needs on our planet are not as extreme as on the all-desert planet of Arrakis in the Dune saga, water issues and water needs are still present throughout our planet. And our relationship with water as humans has, in fact, shaped much of human history and culture and civilization. When you look at many of the creation stories on Earth or of life, water often plays a central feature. That's no surprise, given that anyone who has observed the natural world for any period of time can see the need for rain and water. Many early civilizations were centered around rivers, lakes, or the ocean, first for abundance of food to gather and hunt, then for transportation, irrigation, and commerce. Some native cultures today name the body of water where they live near or where they were raised near, along with their name. I didn't know anything about this tradition when I named my own daughter, but apparently followed the sentiment. She is literally named after the Chesapeake Bay of Maryland. Although, after sharing that with family members after she was born, one of them went and looked it up, probably came back to ask, why on earth we had named our daughter Bay of Oysters, but there it is. But many creation stories in early cultures are in proximity to water. There are creation stories and also early stories about floods and droughts and famines. In the biblical stories, there's the flood story of Noah and his family in the ark, and there are plenty of drought and famine stories. For instance, that of Joseph and his leadership in Egypt and his dreams that predicted the upcoming drought. The Epic of Gilgamesh contains a, epic flood story too. And I could go on with many other examples. Both the need for water and the dichotomy of too much water and too little water have been faced throughout human history on our planet. And while it's not mentioned, water quality, having drinkable water, was just as omnipresent too. Even if you look deep into our planet's history, life existed in water before it ever moved onto land. Now, I admit utter amusement thinking about fish poking their heads out of the water, flopping onto the land, and then developing legs or whatnot to be able to move around. Even, of course, that's not the way it happened, and it's much more complex. But water in its various forms and qualities is deeply part of our history, evolutionary and as humans. Now, I could go on and on and on about the beauty and life-giving qualities of water today, and how when we're looking into space for habitable planets, we're looking for conditions under which liquid water would be present, knowing how essential it is for life. Although that does have some interesting assumptions that goes along with it. I could go on about all of these today, but instead I want to talk about water-related stresses we're facing and their impact on our world and society. It's not that we live on Arrakis, the desert planet in Dune, with that degree of water scarcity, but water is an issue of growing importance in many places on our planet, and has been of huge importance and significant challenge for a long time in many others. Before we get into environmental challenges and climate change related challenges, there is the simple fact that a good bit of our world's population doesn't have ready access to clean, drinkable water the way that most of us here in the United States do. This spans from remote villages to desert areas, to literally communities right in our own backyards. The latter one of these is something that Americans don't often think about, at least unless they've been part of one of those communities themselves. Water is something that is easily taken for granted and not even thought about. If you know that you can just go over to a faucet in your home, know that water will come out of it when you turn it on, know that the water will be drinkable, and then not worry about the water going somewhere away to be cleaned after it leaves your home. For instance, never having to worry about your water looking like this. There it is. That is a picture of my own faucet. Although don't worry, it doesn't look like that very often, but is still questionable nonetheless. I've certainly gained an entirely new appreciation for water, living in RV parks over the past few years that had less than desirable water and sewage situations. And while I still don't have drinkable water from my faucets at home, I fully appreciate that I live in a place and have the means to be able to get drinkable water to bring home fairly easily. That by itself is a privilege too. In California, there are many communities and small water municipalities that do not have clean drinking water. And water scarcity is becoming a huge issue for all throughout the state. Uncertainty about fundamental life needs can be a significant source of chronic stress and worry, and water insecurity is certainly one of those. In some regions of the world, water insecurity and water availability issues have even caused armed conflict and no doubt that will continue into the future. And it's not only far from home. And the predictions that some theorists make about what will be the stress issues here in our country in the near-ish future, water is one of the ones that regularly makes the list. Garbage is too. Interesting, but a matter for another day. Then there's the dichotomy between tons of water and not enough water that we see regularly played out in the so-called natural disasters in various parts of the country. We are in the height of hurricane season, and some parts of the country are getting bombarded with hurricanes of increasing strength and intensity. One of the recent ones dumped so much water in the Mississippi River that the river literally moved backwards. Now, the first time in recorded history that the Mississippi did that was from an earthquake in 1812. But since 2005, the mighty Mississippi has reversed its flow 3 times, all from hurricanes. Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Isaac, and then just last month from Hurricane Ida. To say that took a lot of water would be an understatement. It did, though, a lot. And then, of course, there's the other side of this equation, and areas with drought and fire risk and water scarcity, water rationing. I don't need to go on about this because this is what we are living here in California. Okay, we're getting rather cataclysmic, Michelle. Where's the hope and where are the antidotes to all of this? Now, I'm not planning on leaving you without those, which is why I started with the bad stuff first. I started with the challenges to highlight how crucially important they are and to remind us of parts of them that we may not regularly think about, like the water quality issues, for instance. Now, it is important to connect with water, both in its natural setting, as well as awareness about the stresses and the challenges that are both nearby as well as far away. In our current American culture, it is so easy to just sit inside all day, insulated from the outside, only seeing it through boxes and from boxes, sitting in our homes, looking through the windows or on television. It is rather ironic that we'd rather sit at home watching a nature show on TV rather than going outside ourselves. And I'm guilty of this too, so no judgments here. I love nature shows. But instead, get out and experience some of the natural water in your area. Whether it's an ocean, a lake, a river, a pond, or just a little trickling creek. There is plenty of water around us. Yes, plenty of dry stuff too, which breaks my heart to see. But we do have our bodies of water. And find out what source feeds your home water supply. Find out what your own watershed is. As the line from Wendell Berry often reminds me, when despair for the world grows in me, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water. When despair for the world grows in me, I go and lie down near the waters. Another practice that helps to bring appreciation and awareness for our water is to go without some of the standard amenities for a bit. Say, take a day and don't use your faucets. Okay, it's okay to keep using your toilet and such because that is another matter entirely. But see if you, or maybe your entire family or household, can go without turning on the faucet for a day and just observe. It is interesting how much of our lives assume ready access to water and how much going without it, even just for a little bit, illuminates that dependence. Now, I don't recommend doing what I was forced to do. My record is 5 months without running water, and I learned a lot from it. But that's a bit much for an experiment, and there is no way I would do it again, especially not voluntarily. But it certainly created a deep appreciation that I still remember nearly every time I turn on a faucet. And last, do some research on local and not so local water issues, and what ways there might be to support them and advocate for them. Now, I know this kind of suggestion gets said a lot, but that's because it's important. And for larger scale changes, this is one of the ways it happens, through widespread, sustained advocacy. Our voices and our votes matter, and our pressure matters too. Life depends on water, and so much of our living does too. We come from the water, and we are water. I am originally of Michigan's Upper Grand River watershed, and I'm currently of the Pine Creek watershed. That's my water. What's your water? We don't have to be from a fictional desert planet to appreciate it, and to appreciate its challenges and scarcity. And as the song by Harry Belafonte reminds us, we come from the water, living in the water, go back to the water, turn the world around. Water makes the world go round. Water makes life happen. Beautiful, amazing water. Let us move forward with a greater appreciation of this precious part of our lives and our planet. May it be so.
As we commit together to making this a loving community, we take time to remember that UUCB needs our gifts and our support. We invite you now to make an offering. Each week, half our offerings are shared with a good neighbor organization that needs our financial support. And we hope you will continue to practice generosity with them during these difficult times. This month, in September, our good neighbor is DIR, Developing Indigenous Resources. UUCB member Frederick Shaw, a doctor of public health, founded this health project in 2004 in a large slum in India. DIR has made enormous progress in reducing deaths from preventable diseases, infant mortality, and childhood malnutrition, among other things, by training local staff to teach other residents, especially mothers, how to prevent and treat various common health problems. During the pandemic, DIR is providing nourishing food to the most destitute families. When COVID-19 ends, a similar project will be activated in another nearby slum. Offerings of any value are received with gratitude. Details on how to give electronically will appear on your screen as our offertory begins. Thank you.
Shall we gather by the river, where bright angels' feet have trod, with its crystal tide forever flowing by the throne of God? Yes, we'll gather by the river, the beautiful river. Gather with the saints by the river that flows by the throne of God. Soon we'll reach the shining river. Soon our pilgrimage will cease. Soon our happy hearts will quiver with the melody of peace. Yes, we'll gather by the river, the beautiful river. Gather with the saints by the river that flows by the throne of God. That flows by the throne of God.
Please join me in dedicating our offering. We dedicate our offering and ourselves to the mission of this congregation, to create loving community, inspire spiritual growth, and encourage lives of integrity, joy, and service. It's been good being together today. Remember to frequently check out our website, UUCB.org, to explore the many things our congregation has to offer, even during the pandemic. You can find links in news to The Week Ahead and Beacon on the Hill, which are both great sources of information. 4 important dates are coming up in September. First, Brian Baker and friends are presenting Reflections, a concert and fundraiser for UUCB this coming Saturday, September 25th at 4 p.m. There are both in-person and live streaming options to attend. So please show your support for our wonderful Brian and his music. Visit the homepage of our website, uucb.org, for more information and to purchase tickets ahead. Second, Chalice Circle enrollment is now open. See the schedule on our website under Learning and contact Natalie Campbell by next Sunday, September 26th, to select your circle of choice. Third, please send us your pictures of your beloved, adorable pets, both those still with us and those you remember in your heart, for our Animal Blessing service. The deadline is Wednesday, September 29th. Send to uucbanimals@gmail.com. Then, on Thursday, September 30th, we will have a goodbye celebration to mark the retirement of our beloved custodian, Yao. More details to be in the week ahead. Finally, nominations are now open for our 2022 Good Neighbor program. Details are in the week ahead. And now, please join in singing our closing song, As Tranquil Streams. The words will be on screen. Thank you.
Red hearts and
unites us. All water is one water, shape-shifting as it goes on and on in its unending cycle. The stream we gather by unites us with all the waters of the world, for all of life depends on water. That's why this common everyday element on which our lives depends is sacred. In our thankfulness for water, let us remember to honor, cherish, and care for it, for our own lives, for all life touched by water, and for those who come after us. Blessed be.